Begin today the Gemara on the Lamed of Beis, 2 lines up from the bottom of the Yomad. Amar Abasi. So we're discussing over here wine that a person is receiving from Goyim, as we learned in the Mishnah at the beginning of this Perek, that wine from Goyim, there's a suspicion that it was used to pour Yain Nesach for Avoda Zara, and therefore it's us to have any hana from this. Talk to Gemara, Amar Abasi, Amar Rav Yechanim, Mishum Rav Yehuda ben Beseira. It was said in the name of Rav Yehuda ben Beseira that Shloisha Yeinois Hein. The wine that comes from Goyim, you could put it into 3 different categories. Yayin Nesach, wine that we know for a fact was poured for Avoda Zara. So this is wine that's asaba na. You may not have any benefit from this. It's takrevis Avoda Zara, asaba na, as the Gemara brought in the beginning of the Perek, that it's compared to zivchei mesim. Anything that's slaughtered for Avoda Zara is asaba na, like a mace. And also metame tumah chamura, and it'll have a very high level of tumah, like a mace. Since it's compared to zivchei mesim to a mace, so therefore it's metame just like a mace in an oil, and if you carry it and so on. And bekazayis, the tumah will be even the size of a kazayas. Right? So that means if it's, we're talking here about wines, the liquid of wines, what does it mean a kazayas? The amount in a cup that will be displaced when you place in an olive, when you place in a kazayas, that amount of liquid that comes out is the amount that will be metame. This is something which is unique about this level of tumah, which is like a mace. Usually the tumah for liquids is a revius. But since we're talking about a level of tumah which is like a mace, therefore over here it's metame bechazayis. That's one category of wine from a guy.
You can't even sell it to a goy.
Yeah, asabana completely. Stam yeina. Now the wine that you get from a guy that is exedim et rabbanan, that the guy may have poured it as yain nesach, but you don't know for sure. So this is the stam wine of a guy. Asabana. You may not have any anah from this because of this that we're concerned that he may have used it for Avoda Zara. But over here, umetame tumas mashkin b'revius, because we don't know for a fact it was poured to Avoda Zara, the tumah of this will be just like the tumah of every other mashkin, which is a revius. That means that this mashkin will only be mekabel tumah, like any other mashkin. That's mekabel tumah only if it's a revius, and also to be metame something else, it's only if it's a revius. Hamafkid, then there's the 3rd category. Hamafkid yena eitzel aved kechavim. If a person gives his own wine to a guy to keep for him, so asa b'shtiyah, so then you will not be allowed to drink it. But umutar ba'ana, you will be allowed to have anah from this wine. When you give it to a guy, so in such a case, so Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira said, even if the guy is keeping it for you in his house, nothing to be concerned about. You're allowed to have anah from it. You're not allowed to drink it, but you're still allowed to have anah from this. Okay, but the Gemara asks on this that there seems to be a clear contradiction from a Mishnah. The last point here. But Vatnan in a Mishnah it says, person gives his fruits, his produce for a guy to keep for him, so you can't use it. It's going to be like the paytas of a guy, l'shviyas or l'maiser, and therefore even if this is fruits that you gave to a guy that's not from the Shemitah year, and the maiseris was separated properly, but when you give it to a guy, so then just like you can't eat from the fruits of a guy, you don't know if he may have taken these fruits from a Shemitah year, or there's no maiser separated, so now the guy may have exchanged your fruits for his fruits, and so you can't take back these fruits from him. So if so, we should say the same thing here regarding the wine. Maybe the guy exchanged your wine with his wine, with the wine of the guy. So how does it say here that it's mutar ba'ana? So the Gemara answers, it depends. The case when Avoda ben Beseira said that you gave your wine at Pekadon to a guy and you could use it, the reason is kagayin sheyichad loy keren zavis. It's when the guy tells the yid, here, you can put it, I'm going to store it for you, I'll keep it for you, and he gives him a place, a room, a corner, and Rashi adds, what the Gemara means over here is, and he gives him a key. Only the yid has the key to that room, to storage, that the guy can't reach it. Or, even if there's no key, Rashi says there's a chaysim, there's a proper seal on this wine, so the yid will be able to see if it was tampered with. So just a key or a seal will be good enough. That's the case that Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira said that it'll be mutar ba'ana. Okay, but it's still though asa b'shtiyah. Even over here, even in this case, it's still going to be asa to drink. So the Gemara asks on this, Ihachi, if that's the case, b'shtiyah nami lishtri. It should be mutar to drink as well. If it's locked in a room or with a seal, that should be enough. And the Gemara brings an incident that happened. Rabbi Yechanan ikla le Parait. He came to a place called Parait. And Omar, he said to the people there, Klum yesh mishnas bar kapara. Does anybody have anything to teach from the Mishnayos that Bar Kapara gathered together? Bar Kapara was a student or colleague of Rabbeinu HaKadosh that put together the Mishnayos, and he also put together many halachas in his own Mishnayos, which was not included in the Mishnayos that we have. It was braises that Bar Kapara put together. So after he passed away, Rabbi Yochanan came to a place where he was, and he asked people, could you tell me any halacha that Bar Kapara taught? So Tanale Rab Tanchum Demin Parad, Rab Tanchum from that place, Parad, he taught that Bar Kapara in his brayse taught, Hamafkid Yeinai Eitz Loiv Kachavim, you give your guy, your wine that is to a guy to keep for you, Mutter B'shtia, you're allowed to drink from this wine. And we're talking about this kind of case. You gave it to a guy, and the guy is keeping it in a place that's in a room locked or with a seal, then you can drink from it. Not only Hanab, you can even drink from this. After Rabbi Yochanan heard this halacha, so he was happy to hear a halacha from Bar Kapara. Kari Alei, he said on this the pasuk, Makam sheyipol ha'etz sham yihu, that the place where a tree falls, that's where it will remain. That's where it will be. It remains there. So the Gemara asks, what was he saying with this pasuk when he said about Bar Kapara that it should remain there? Sham yihu sol kadaitach, he remains there. This is after Bar Kapara passed away. So after he passed away, he doesn't remain there. Elo, what this means is, Sham Yihu Peiraisa, that even after he passes away, the fruits from the tree that come from the tree remain there as well. So too over here, when he wanted to know a halachas, and he asked the Chachamim, the people over there, when Chachamim want to know a halacha, they can ask the people of the city that heard from him and learned from him, so they are the peiros that remain even after this Talmud Chacham passes away. That's what Rabbi Yochanan said about this halacha. But again, the point is, we learn it from the brayse of Bar Kapara that in a place where you give a pekadon, your wine, to a guy and he puts it in a place, in a room, and it's locked or it's sealed, you can even drink from this. So the Gemara says, it's not a question from this brayse of Bar Kapara on what was taught before in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseida, because it's takam machlokes. Ha Rabbi Eliezer and ha Rabbanan. It's a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbanan about this. The Tanya, as we learned in a different brayse. A person is buying a space from a house of a guy, or so again, he's either buying or renting a space in the courtyard of a guy. And what does he do with this space? If he's buying it as a storage space for his wine, he fills it up with wine. The key of this space, the storage space that he bought or rented from the guy, or there's a seal on this that is in the hands of the Yid. Right. So Rabbi Eliezer matter. Rabbi Eliezer says that this wine is mutter to drink, and this is like what Bar Kapara taught. It's totally mutter. But the Chachamim still say that this is aser. You should not do this because there's still a concern that the guy may tamper with this. But b'di'evet, it'll be aser to drink. But b'di'evet, they didn't aser it completely b'hana. And this is, the Chachamim is like the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseida that it'll be mutter b'hana, but they still said it's going to be aser to drink. And just to clarify this case, this brayse, when it says that a Yid bought or rented the property from a guy, it's speaking about a case where the Yid that's renting the space is not living there. He's just using it as a storage. If the Yid himself is living there, then there's no concern at all. But the Yid is not living there. He's renting or buying this space in the courtyard of a guy, and the guy is the only one that comes in and out there. Here is the exact same thing like when you're mafkid, when you give it as a pekadon to a guy, and the guy gives you a room, or there's a seal in the wine, and here's this machlokes if it'll be mutter to drink or not. Amar Rab Chiya, bereid Rab Chiya bar Nachmani, Amar Rab Chisda, Amar Rav, Amar La, Amar Rab Chisda, Amar Zeiri, Amar La, Amar Rab Chisda, der Amali Abba bar Chama, Hachi Amar Zeiri. This is what Zeiri said. Okay, different versions of exactly who said this, but Halacha ke Rabbi Eliezer. Regarding this machlokes, we paskin like Rabbi Eliezer. Then in such a case, if there's a lock on the room, or even just one seal on the wine that's being stored by a guy, one seal or one lock on the room is good enough that you can drink from this wine. It's completely mutter. Huh? Yeah. Okay. Or there's another gerse, Berei de Rab Chanina, or Berei de Rabbe, son of Rabbe bar Nachmani. Okay.
So if a guy touches it, it's...
No, we're not talking. It's sealed. It's sealed, closed. So we're not. The point is, with one seal, or with just, if it's just locked in a room, we're not concerned that the guy tampered with it. Because if he would have, you would see. Yeah, he'd have to break the lock, or we'd have to open the seal, and you would see that he tampered with it, and that's good enough. That's the psak of the Gemara here, and this is the halach in Shulchan Aruch. There's actually a discussion here in Tosfos and another Rishonim that in the Gemara that we learned yesterday, and in other places in the Gemara it's mashma that for wine you have to have a double seal. Chaysim b'tei chaysim. The Gemara we learned yesterday, it said that if it's wine that's going bad, vinegar, it's not a good wine anymore, then it's enough to have one seal. But otherwise you have to have two seals. So Tosfos over here says that in this case, because it's talking about a yid that's giving this wine as a pekaton to a guy, and the yid knows how he sealed it, and he comes back and he sees, he'll be able to see if the seal was tampered with. So in such a case, one seal is good enough. But wine that's lachatchila coming from a guy, and the yid doesn't have the ability to recognize if it was tampered with or not, in such a case, you would need a double seal for this. That's according to one pshat in Tosfos. There's other pshatim as well. Okay, now here the Gemara actually brings it to a different Amirim that spoke about this, regarding this machlokes, if one seal is good enough or not. There's a few versions to this. Rabbi Elazar said, and don't confuse this with Rabbi Eliezer the Tana. There's Rabbi Eliezer the Tana, then there's Rabbi Elazar the Amayra. So Rabbi Elazar said, Hakal mishtame b'chaysim echad, any kind of beverage that's coming from a guy, it could be all protected with one seal, chutz min hayayin. Besides wine, she'ein mishtame b'chaysim echad. One seal is not good enough. You have to have a double seal because the guy is interested in using the wine to pour for his Avoda Zara, so he has more of an interest. So he may be tempted to break this one seal and pour it for his Avoda Zara. So you have to have a double seal by wine. But Rabbi Yochanan says, wine, even wine, could also be protected just with one seal. So the Gemara explains, it's not their argument that they're not arguing about this because they're bringing here the opinions that we mentioned before. Rabbi Eliezer is Rabbi Elazar, that is. Rabbi Elazar is bringing the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, the Tana, and Hakarabanan, Rabbi Yochanan is bringing the opinion of the Rabbanan that says you have to have a double seal. There's another version of this machlekes between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yochanan, which was much more stringent. That Amar Rabbi Elazar said, "Hakol mishtamer b'chaysim b'toy chaysim." Everything else that comes from a guy, it's enough to protect it by a double seal. Chutz min hayayin, besides wine, she'ein mishtamer b'chaysim b'toy chaysim. Even with a double seal, it'll also not be good enough. The Gemara will soon describe what a double seal is. All right, so obviously, if you have a double seal, would be if you have one vessel that's sealed, and that vessel is placed into a second vessel that's sealed a second time, that's obviously a good double seal. So for wine, that's also not good enough. That's to what extent we're chayshish that a guy wants to get to this wine to use it for his Avoda Zara. But Rabbi Yochanan says, "Afilu yayin mishtamer b'chaysim b'toy chaysim." A wine could be protected with a double seal. Now, according to this version, v'tavaya karabanan, both Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar are following the opinion of the Rabbanan that you have to have a double seal. Mar Savas, now one opinion here is keep liga Rabbanan alei the Rabbi Eliezer b'chaysim. They're arguing about b'chaysim echad regarding one seal. Al b'chaysim b'toy chaysim sharu. The Rabbanan would agree that if it's a double seal, that by wine it's allowed. But Umar Sava, the other opinion here is that Afilu chaysim b'toy chaysim asri. Rabbi Eliezer, their argues on the Rabbanan, they spoke about one seal, but the same would be a double seal. They still would say that it's also to drink.
Why?
Because that's how lohot, that's how excited a guy is to try to get his wine for Avoda Zara. Doesn't matter. He's still going to try. He's going to break it, and he'll try to seal it back with that double seal.
In which
right?
case?
We don't pass him this way, but this according to Rabbi Eliezer, the guy is interested in getting this wine. Okay, so now the Gemara describes the double seal. What is going to qualify for a double seal? So that's besides what I mentioned before. Obviously, when you have two vessels, but even if it's one vessel, if it's one barrel, Rava says, Agna apuma de chavita. If you take a bowl and you cover a barrel, and shrike v'chasima. So first, it's cemented closed. That's already considered to be one seal. But besides that, v'chasima, you have some other sign that you make. So you put letters or whatever other picture you make inside the seal. That's considered to be a second seal. Havachaisim b'toichaisim. That's a double seal. It's not literally two seals, but you have the cementing itself closed, and then another signature or something that you make on the seal. That's chaisim b'toichaisim. But viloiloi, if you don't have that second writing on the seal, then it's not a double seal. Another case of a seal, chaysim, dikula, if you have the barrel that's closed, and besides the closure, you also have a basket that's placed on top of it. But in what way? Umahadik, that basket that's sealing it is tight. It's not just a basket that you loosely throw over the barrel, but it's a basket that it goes tight onto to close it. So that's also Avoda Zara. That's a double seal. But loy mahadik, if this basket that you throw over the barrel is not tight, then loy Avoda Zara. It's not a double seal. It's very easy to just remove this basket. A third example, noid. If you have a leather flask that holds wine in it, bidisakya, and now that noid is tied closed, it's sealed, and then it's placed into another kind of leather flask that is also closed. Chasimas piv lamato. So now it depends. If the first sack, we're talking over here about a leather bag, a leather sack. If it's placed into another leather bag and it's turned upside down, so the opening of it is upside down, then have a chaysim b'tei chaysim. That's considered to be that it's sealed, a double seal, because the bag that's inside is upside down. For the guy to tamper with it, he has to take it out, turn it over. It makes it more difficult for him to open up. But if piv l'mayla, if the opening of this bag you placed inside another bag is all an opening on the top, it will not qualify for a double seal. But now another example, even if you just have the wine that's being stored in one leather sack, but without a second one. But if you take this bag that you're keeping the wine in and you tie it closed, and then what do you do with this after you tie it closed? You sort of tuck it inside. You take it and you fold it over and you tuck it inside, and then you make a second knot. You tie it then a second time with the top. Then have a chaysim b'tei chaysim. That's also considered to be a double seal. These are all the different possibilities, different examples of creating a double seal without actually having two different vessels, so two mamish complete two different seals. Tanra Banan Abraisa, we learned other halachas regarding wine. But Ishaina, in the beginning, it was said, Yayin shel en kushi, the wine that comes from en kushi. This is a place of the kutim. All right, so as Rashi here says, the kutim, as we know, are the people that were Megayir in the time of the first place of Mikdash, and their gatus was a questionable gatus, and this Braisa seems to be accepting the fact that these kutim are Yidden. So they had wine in their area. Aser, you're not allowed to drink from this wine. The reason is, or maybe even Hana as well, the wine is totally Aser, because of the area called Biras Rika, which was a place of Goyim, of Avoda Zara, that lived right near them. V'shel Barkese, another city of the Kutim, that if you get wine from this area, Barkese, Aser, it's Aser mipnei Kfar Parshoi, because of this town called Kfar Parshoi that was full of Goyim. V'shel Zagda, the wine that came from the Kutim in a place of Zagda. It's also Aser mipnei Kfar Shalem, because of Goyim that come from a town nearby called Kfar Shalem. This is the way it was originally said. Now the point that you see over here in the Gemara is that we're not concerned about the wine from the Kutim themselves. And the reason is because the Kutim had their history. There was a time period that the Kutim, after they were Megayir, they were Avoda Zara. Then later on they dropped their Avoda Zara. And then at a later time, they actually returned to their Avoda Zara. This Braisa is talking about the time period where the Kutim themselves were not Avoda Zara, so there's no concern about using their wine. But the concern though is that these Kutim that have their wine are not careful with not allowing the Goyim in their area to touch and use the wine. So therefore you can't have a noah from this wine. This is the way they passed in the beginning. But then Chazr Leima, they changed and they said that it depends. Chavi is psuchais, if the barrels that you're getting from the Kutim are open barrels, then asurais. Then it's not allowed. Stumais, if though it's closed barrels, then mutaris, then it will be allowed. As long as it has one seal, it's good enough, closed barrel. So the Gemara explains, why did they change? What was the thinking in the beginning, and what did they change in the end? In the beginning they were thinking, a kuti, he's not particular and he's not careful that a guy should not touch this wine. Doesn't make a difference if it's open or closed. But then afterwards they realized and they changed and they said that when is a guy, the kuti that is, not careful with the guy to touch it, if it's an open barrel of wine. But But if it's a closed, a sealed barrel of wine, the kutim were careful that a guy shouldn't touch this. And the reason is, the open barrels that the kutim have, they're drinking it for themselves. They're not planning on selling it. So there, they weren't careful that a guy shouldn't touch it. But the sealed barrels of wine, why are they sealed? Because they're planning on selling it to the Yidden. And they know a Yid is not going to buy it if a guy is going to tamper with it, touch it. So therefore, by the sealed barrels, they were careful that a guy shouldn't touch it. The Gemara on this lalacha, stumais mataris, and these sealed barrels of wine from the area of the kutim is going to be allowed. You can rely on this, that they're careful that a guy shouldn't touch it. But Meramini, I'll ask you from what it says in the Braisa. If you send a barrel of wine to be delivered by a kuti, a guy for sure, but here we're talking even about a kuti, or v'shal tzir, v'shal muriyas, b'yad oivekachavim, or you're sending tzir and muriyas. These are both things that are made with from the fish oil. As muriyas may have wine mixed into it. Tzir, I don't think so. It's just from these fats of the fish from a guy. Rashi says it could be coming from dogim tumeim, from non-kosher fish. That's what the concern of here. Yeah, Rashi says the murius is the one that has could have wine in it. So in such a case, if it's being sent, if it's being sent by a guy, so if there's a seal on this food, whether on the wine or on the food that's being sent there, and you recognize the seal, v'sasmai, and it's sealed closed, mutter. It's allowed for you to use this. Vimlav, if you don't recognize the seal, asa. It'll be asa for you to use this. So we see clearly here in the Braisa that wine being delivered by a kuti, even if it's sealed, that's still a problem. Unless you can recognize that seal was not tampered with. But before we said that the kutim, as long as it's a barrel that's sealed, we can rely on this, because the kutim want to be able to sell this to a yid, and they're not going to allow a guy to touch it. So the Gemara answers, it's not a contradiction. Kan be'ir, if it's in the city, the kutim know that there's other people around, the Yidden are around, and they see what's going on. So here, the barrels that are closed from the kutim in a city, you can use it. We're not afraid that it was tampered with. But kan b'derech, in the second brayse, it's wine that's being sent with a kuti on the road when no one's around. Here, it's possible that he wasn't careful even with a sealed wine, and someone tampered with it, or a guy tampered with it, and therefore, unless you recognize the seal, you can't use it. Rabbi Yirmiyah asks on this answer, Midi Hanoch De'ir Loi B'derech Asu. The wine of the kutim that are in a city, weren't they delivered on a road going from the wine press, which is outside the city, then it was delivered inside the city. So even the wine from the city that the kutim have, it was brought from outside. So how could you rely and use this if it was sealed? Elam Rabbi Yirmiyah, so therefore Rabbi Yirmiyah says the answer is different. Bein hagittois shanino. When it said before that you could rely on using the sealed wine from a kuti, that's only that wine that's still there in the gittois, in the place where the wine is being pressed. And that time when everyone is there and when the wine is being pressed. Because kivin the kula almi, afchi, since there's many people that are walking around there, there's a lot of people that are in that area, so therefore, mirsas, the kuti is concerned that a yid will notice that the wine is being tampered with. Because Omar Hashti Chazili, if a yid will see that this wine is tampered with by a guy, or if I will open it up, mafsidili, I'm going to have a loss here. I won't be able to sell it to a yid. And therefore, it's only so the halacha we said before that you can trust kutim is only ben agitais. In this place, when it's sealed, that's enough. But otherwise, even in the city or on the road, you can't rely on this because a guy may have tampered with it. Now the Gemara begins a new inyan connected to what we're discussing. Till we're talking about wine from a guy. What's the story with beer that is by goyim? That's this Gemara here. Talk to Gemara Itmer. So we learned the following machlokes. Why is it that Chachamim said that beer from a guy and from Avoda Zara is also not allowed? Okay, so now this halacha about beer, it's interesting, in the Mishnah, or the Gemara doesn't bring any Mishnah or a Braisa as a source for this. It's not brought in the Mishnah. But apparently in this man of the Gemara, it was a known thing that the beer of Goyim is also asa. So what's the reason for this? So the Machlokes says, Rami Bachama Rabbi Yitzchak, he says the reason is Mishum Chasnos. In order not to come to intermarry with Goyim. If you will drink their beer, and you join them in parties, and you'll come to be friendly and close to them, you can come to intermarry. That's the reason. Rav Nachman Omar, Mishum Gilui. The reason is because the beer by Goyim, they're not careful with leaving it exposed overnight, and then snakes could put their venom inside. As it was mentioned before in the Gemara, we learned about this. That's the reason why we don't drink beer from Goyim. So now, the second opinion here, the Gemara explains, Agilui Demai. If the concern is that it's being left exposed, when? At what point is it being left exposed? Ile Megillah as Yaisa is the time when they are producing the beer, and they have the beers or the vats of the beer that are being left exposed at that time. Ananami Maglina. When we produce beer, that's how it's done. It has to be left open. If you seal it closed and the barrel can burst from this beer that's being made, you have to leave it open. So that's how we also do it. So that's not a concern. If it's the beer after it's already produced and now it's being stored in barrels and it's being left open, when we store beer, it's also left open this way. And apparently, there's no concern because the snakes are not interested in drinking from this beer. So, as I mentioned, when we learned the Gemara before about this, not every beverage is there a problem when it's left open that a snake can drink from it. We saw every day in the Gemara, even by wine, when it's diluted or it's cooked wine, the snake won't. So by beer, there's no concern about this. So at what point is there a concern about this beer that it was left uncovered? Says the Gemara, it means in a place where when they produce the beer and they want to have very pure, good water for the beer, what they do is they draw the water and then they leave the water over a while to let it become the clear water, and they leave that exposed. That's the issue with this beer. In fact, the Gemara, if that's the case, there should be a limitation to this isra of using the beer from goyim. Elamayativ, so yashon tishtiri, beer that's already older beer should be allowed. The Omar Rav, or the Gersi here is the Omar Rab Chanina. Chanina said yashon mutter, that when you have old wine that was left exposed, you're allowed to drink from it, and the reason is because ein manichai liyashin. If there's the venom of a snake inside the wine, then the wine won't age. What's going to happen is the wine's going to go sour. So if you see wine that was left exposed, but then you see that the wine remains in good quality and it ages, it's still good wine, so then you can drink from it, even if it was left open. Hechmitz. However, if it goes bad, then...
Hechmitz mutar.
1 second. Yashon mutar. Ein manichai leyashin. It doesn't allow it to become old. 1 second. Hechmitz mutar. Oh, yeah, okay. The pshat over here is hechmitz mutter. Hechmitz over here does not mean that it became vinegar. Okay, this is a little confusing, the lashon of the Gemara. But hechmitz over here means wine, fresh wine that was pressed in the wine press. It's still juice, and now afterwards it begins fermenting and it becomes wine. The word hechmitz over here means you see that the fermentation process begins. That this wine that was pressed just now, it begins to ferment, then mutter, then it's going to be allowed to drink from this. And the reason is because if there's the venom of a snake in it, it won't ferment. So if you see that it's fermenting, it's allowed. Ein manicha lahachmitz. Okay, so the Gemara explains, because the reason is because ein manicha lahachmitz. If there was a venom of the snake inside, it would not ferment. So the point is, we see here that if it remains in good quality even over time, that means that the snake, there's no snake, there's no venom over here. So if so, regarding beer, it should be mutter to drink older beer from a guy. And says the Gemara, you're right, it's not this reason it should be mutter, but gzeira yashan oto chadash. They made a gzeira because of old wine, that if you beer that is, if they'll allow you to drink old beer, you may come to drink new beer. Therefore, it's any beer from a guy is asar. Okay, now the Gemara brings Rav Papa. When Rav Papa drank beer from a guy, Rav Papa mafikin leila above the chanusa. He took the beer out of the store where he bought it in, and he vishasi, and he drank the beer from a guy. Rav Acha, or Rav Achai that is, ma'isel lebeisei, he brought the beer to his house, and vishasi, and he drank the beer of a guy in his house. And the Gemara explains, why did they drink it? Because of a tarvayu, both Rav Papa and Rav Achai held that mishum chasnos, that the only reason why we don't drink beer from a guy is so not to join in their parties and not to come to intermarry. And therefore that's only if you're drinking it in the premises of the guy, in his house or by his parties. But if you take it out of the store, or according to Rav Achai, you bring it into your house and you drink the beer there, then it's not a problem. Yeah, so the Gemara explains that this is both of their opinion, that the Mio Rav Achai Avoda Zara. Rav Achai made a greater fence or bigger distance, that he didn't just drink it right outside the store, he brought it into his house and he drank there. Okay, so this is actually the halacha. It's like this opinion, this halacha in Shulchan Aruch, I believe, that the beer from a guy is mutter as long as it's not you're not drinking beer by a party of goyim. If you buy the beer and you drink it in your house, then it's mutter. Rav Shmuel bar Bizne ikla lemurgvan. he found himself in this place, Morgavan, and as we'll see, Rashi brings, this is a place where there were Yidden there, that they weren't even careful with the wine from a guy. They drank wine from Goyim. So Aisle Chamre, they brought him wine to drink, V'layishti, he didn't drink the wine. Aisle Shichre, they brought him beer from Goyim to drink, V'layishti, and he didn't drink it either. So the Gemara says, Bishlai Mechamra, the reason he didn't drink the wine, Mishum Shimtza, because of the suspicion that this is wine from Goyim and it was poured for Yain Nesach. Shichra Mishumai, why didn't he drink the beer? According to what we just said, the beer from a guy is allowed as long as you don't drink it by the Goyim. Says the Gemara, Mishum, the reason is Mishum Shimtza the Shimtza, because of a suspicion that will lead to another problem. Meaning, because this was a place of Yidden that weren't careful with Yain of a guy, so he made an extra precaution to show them that you have to stay far from them, and therefore even the beer from Goyim he didn't drink in order not to come to drink from their wine. Amar Rav says, Hai Shichra Dharma Shari. The beer from Goyim, from Armenians, from Goyim is allowed. V'chiyah beri, however, he says, my son B'chiyah lei nishtamina, should not drink from the beer from Goyim. So the Gemara says, what does this mean? He's giving a special issur for his own son. Manavshach. What was his opinion? Ishari l'kulam mishari. If it's allowed, it should be allowed for everyone, for his son as well. And he also said, if it's not allowed, l'kulam ma'aser, it shouldn't be allowed for anybody. So the Gemara explains. Rav's opinion was that what is the issue with beer that Goyim produce? Mishum giluya. The issue is like the opinion we said before, because they leave the water exposed and there could be the venom of a snake inside. So now, but however, Rav said that the ingredients that they put inside the beer, v'azl merura de kashusa, there's a very strong taste that comes from the kashusa, which is whatever it is. Kashusa is some kind of herb that they place inside the beer, the kalulezira, and it burns away, it gets rid of the effects of the venom of a snake that may be inside there. So therefore, Rav said that for everybody, it's allowed to drink from this. But now, udulaki malkile, someone that is weak, there will still be an effect of this venom that will make this person weaker. In other words, a healthy person that has a good, healthy immune system, if he'll drink from this beer, that there could be some venom of the snake inside, it won't affect him, because there's a very sharp herb inside that will take away that effect from the venom. But someone that doesn't have a strong immune system, he still may be affected from this. So makile tfei, it'll make him even weaker. And therefore, Rebbe said, V'chiyah beri, my son Chiyah, hoyev lucky, since he's weak, he should not drink from this beer. Amar Shmuel said, Kol hashratzim yesh lahem eres. All of these creeping, crawling things that they have some venom, they have some poison that they can place inside beverages. Shal nachash memis. But the venom of a snake can kill you. Shal shratzim ein memis. But from the other shratzim, they will not cause you to die. Amar Shmuel Chiyah bar Rav. Shmuel said to Chiyah, son of Rav, bar Aryeh, son of a lion, let me tell you a good halacha, a good point that your father said. This is what your father said. If you look at these Armenians, the Goyim that seem to be, they're bloated. Why is this? Because they drink from beverages that are left open, and that there's the snake's venom inside. But v'lei meiso, the reason why they don't die is because I did the achli shkatzim uramasim. Because the Goyim, they eat from shkatzim and ramasim, from the non-kosher food, and from all these creeping and crawling things, chavel gufayo, from all this food, it puts inside their body this heat. It sounds like what it's saying is, when you eat all these kinds of foods, it strengthens their immune system, and therefore even if they drink from something which was exposed and has some snake venom inside, it'll be protected, they won't die. Okay, so that's only for Goyim, but for a Yid though, you have to be careful. The Gemara says,
burn up the venom.
Yeah, okay, that's a simple taich. It's hot because they eat from the shkatzim and masim. It's hot, and therefore it burns up the venom from. Amar Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef says, "Hi chala de shichra." If you have vinegar that comes from beer, the arma from Goyim, aser. So you're not allowed to use this, and the reason is the ma'arvi ba durdaya the yain nesach, because what do they do with this vinegar from the beer? They mix into it the sediments from wine. This is yain nesach, poured for Avoda Zara. Amar Ravashi, but Ravashi says it depends, because ume oitzer shari. If this is beer or this vinegar that was from the beer, if it's from a place of storage, then it's allowed. Because keeping the ma'avi bay, once they mix in the sediments of the wine, misri sari, it goes sour after a short period of time. So if it's coming from the guy's house, then it's not allowed. You could expect that it's possible that the guy mixed in from these wine sediments. But if it's coming from a storage and he's storing it for a long time, he did not mix in any of these wine sediments, because then he wouldn't be storing it, and then it will be allowed.